welcome to Code Harvest. This is part 1 of the Tastalicious shopping cart web series where we demonstrate step by step with our explanations as to how you can create a floating shopping cart for a restaurant. However, we will be focusing on creating the shopping cart and not the rest of the restaurant website, so drop a comment if you'd like me to create a tutorial for the full website. Now give this video a like, subscribe to Code Harvest, and now let's get started. Alright, so right now we are at the index page of our web page, and to basically run you down on what's going on, so at the top of our body we can see that this is our navigation bar. So we basically divided this navigation bar into two parts, where the first part is the left part of the navigation bar, which is where the logo is held, and then the right side, which is where the links are held, as well as the cart button. And then next comes our menu choices. So inside our main body or our main content, we have basically our main choices as well as the menu list. So in our menu choices, we have an unordered list of all of the choices that we have, where each list item is divided into two parts with the image on top and the text basically describing what item it is at the bottom. Then for our menu list, we have a container that basically holds the title as well as the menu list. So the first part of the food menu container is the text, where we have included the pink, basically the purple pink gradient circle, as well as the text, the title. And then here we have included our unordered list, where all of our menus are at. And so we have so it's divided. Each list item is divided into two parts, where the first part is the image container, containing the image container, the image of the food, and then the text, basically describing what it is, the title, the name of it, the price, as well as the button in order to order. So that's all we have in our HTML page. Then if we check our JavaScript page, the only thing that we have right now, so this is where we'll be including all of our JavaScript code in this file right here. So right now, as you can see, we only have a navigation bar function. So basically this function here allows us to scroll down, and so basically when the window is scrolling down and it's greater than 0, which means it's greater than 0, the box shadow is added and there's a little bit of padding top. So when you see the effect, when you try to scroll down, you can see that a box shadow is added to the navigation bar, and the navigation bar stays on top as well. And then when we go back up, the box shadow is removed and the extra padding space is removed, so it goes back into position. So there's a very nice smooth transition which we have created with CSS. And now lastly, our CSS file, we just have the design. We've included the design properties of all of our elements that are currently in our HTML page. So now let's first work on the shopping cart, on the HTML side of the shopping cart. Alright, so now we're going to be working on including the shopping cart element. So the first thing that we want to do is include a comment, so that we can, in case we need to find the shopping cart and the website gets longer, there's more code, we are able to find the code easily by using the search feature that VS Code has, and so we'll be able to find what we're looking for easily. And it also makes our HTML file pretty neat to go through. So now the first thing that we're going to be including is a div. And this div is, we're first going to create a container that holds everything together. And so the ID that we're going to assign this div to, we will call cart window. So basically for our shopping cart, we will include the cart itself, and then there will be basically a black fade. Alright, so the reason why we have called it cart window is because we want the shopping cart, when the user clicks on the shopping cart container or element should basically hold in or take over the whole screen of the page, or the whole window of the page, so that the right side of the page or the right side of the screen includes the shopping cart, whereas the left side just includes a dark transparent background, where these other elements are not as clearly visible, as the main focus will be towards the shopping cart. And now we're going to create another div, and this div is responsible for the shopping cart. So now we're going to create an ID, and we're going to call it cart box. So this is where all of our elements, all of the shopping cart elements, the images, the option to delete, the total price, everything like that is going to be included. So the first thing that we want to do is include the heading, so basically the title, and as well as the arrow. So we're going to create a class, and we're going to call it heading. Then we're going to create another div, and we're going to create another class. So this is the heading that will hold the title of the shopping cart. So it's going to say my order, quick delivery, and then at the right side there'll be a button or an SVG. So heading is just going to be the container, and then we're going to create a wrapper, and we're going to call it heading layout. So this will include two parts. The first part will be the title, and then the second part will include the button, where the user is able to close the shopping cart basically. And we're going to be including an SVG very soon. So the first thing that we want to do is we are going to create a class for this, and we're going to call it title circle container. So this is the first part of the text area of the heading. So this is basically going to include two elements. The first one will be the circle, the purple circle that is also in the menu title or heading, and then the second element will be the text. So we're going to create two divs. So the first div, we're going to create a class, and we're going to call it purple pink circle. So this is going to include the same purple pink circle design. So because it is already defined in the menu list, we don't need to, and we're using a class, we can use the same class or the same element for our shopping cart. And then the next element that is in this title circle container will be the text. So the first text that will be included is my order. And then the second one will be quick delivery. So this should be informative enough for the users. And then the next element in the heading is the button. So the user is able to close their shopping cart. And so we're going to create a class, and we're going to call this close button. And then we're going to include an SVG. So we're going to look for an SVG in SVG repo. So we're going to look for an arrow, and we are going to go with this one right here. Alright, so basically what would be in the shopping cart, it is now included in the page right now. So we're going to include it in the shopping cart very soon with CSS. However, this is a rough idea of how the heading will look like. And the SVG is not visible because we haven't set the width and height yet, but we'll set it with CSS. So now, the next thing that we are going to include is the cart items container, which will contain all of the cart items. So we're going to create an ID, and we're going to call it cart items container. So now in this container, there will be multiple elements. So obviously the unordered list will be included in the container, and this unordered list will include all of the cart items basically. However, we also want to include another element, and basically this element is basically a substitute as to whether and we're going to load all of the items with JavaScript. Hence, we're not going to be designing the HTML side here. We're going to design it in JavaScript. So right now we are going to, another div that is going to be included is a message basically that will tell the user, if there is nothing in their shopping cart, then there'll be a little message that will let them know that their cart is empty. So we're going to create a span element, and we're going to create a class, and we're going to call it empty cart message. And for this message, it will just tell the user that your cart is empty, order an item. And another thing that we want to include is so basically what we want to do is we want to include a feature where the user is able, so when the cart items, basically the cart items container will be a fixed height from here to here. So the cart items container will not increase in height as the cart items are added, it will stay the same. However, the cart items container will include a specific height, so for example from here to here, and so any item that overflows the cart items container should be hidden. And if any cart items are hidden, we want to basically create a smooth transition, or a fade that shows that there are more items in the cart list. So then the user basically knows that the user has more items in their cart items that they could probably check out, and they could scroll down from there. So basically we're going to create a white overflow effect. So we're going to create a class, and we're going to call this white fade overflow. And so there will be two types of overflows, one on top and one on bottom. So basically, when the user hasn't scrolled down yet and they've just viewed their shopping cart, there should be a white glow at the bottom, so at the bottom of the unordered list. However, when the user scrolls down, there will be items upwards that will be hidden. So we basically want the user to know that they could scroll up as well, and this overflow white fade will indicate that, will help the user to know that there's more items on top, and they could scroll down to see the items on top. And then if there are more items at the bottom, they're able to see more items at the bottom as well. Alright, so now we're going to be including the last section of the shopping cart, which is the cart checkout. So in this cart checkout, it will just include the total price as well as the button. So the total price to indicate how many, the total price of the items that were ordered and that were kept in the shopping cart, and then the button in order to check out, so that when the user clicks on this checkout button, it should basically remove all of the items, and it basically assumes that the customer has bought everything in that shopping cart. So then the cart is emptied and the total price is set to 0. And we're going to be working with that with JavaScript. So for now, we're going to create an ID, and we're going to call this cart checkout. Then we're going to create another ID, and so basically this element, cart checkout, will be divided into two parts. First part will be the text, the total price, showing the user how much the total price of the amount of the products that they have ordered, and so we're going to call this total checkout. And so this will include two elements. The first one will be the text, just the title or the heading of the price section. So we're just going to call it total. So we're going to create a paragraph tag, and we're just going to name the text total. And then we're going to include a span element, and this span element will include the price, and basically the price will change or update whenever the user basically adds something to the cart, and we're going to work with JavaScript later on. However, we're going to include a class called price, and we're going to, for now, by default, the price will be set to $0, but then that should be able to change with JavaScript later on. And now the second element of the cart checkout is the button, and this button, when the user once again clicks on the button, all of the items in the cart should be erased or removed. So we're going to call this ID checkout button. Now, because we are including a certain style, so this page, or basically this web page, should include many of the elements, whether it be a button or whether it be these circles that are included, the logo. Basically the style of the web page or the company is a purple-pink gradient color. So we want to include the same style for our button. And because we've already created this style, especially for this image right here, we are just going to include the class word. We've already included the class word, so we're just going to include the same class which has the style that we want onto this button as well. And the last thing that we want to do is end this with extending the name. So the end, we are just indicating that this is the end of the shopping cart, so our HTML page or HTML file looks much more organized. So now we're going to head over to CSS, and we're going to scroll over to basically where we have included the main body. And so right after the main body, we're going to create a comment called cart, and we're going to indicate when the cart ends. So we're going to add everything, all of the elements. We're going to design it inside or between these two elements. So now the first thing we want to design is the first element that is in the shopping cart, which is the cart window. So we're going to, because it is an ID, we're selecting it with a hashtag, and basically we want once again the cart window should take up the full page, the full width and the full height of the page, and it should not extend further. It should stay at 100% width and 100% height. So we're going to set the width to 100%. The height, we're going to set it to 100% of the viewport height. So we're going to set it to VH, which stands for viewport height. So basically it will take the height from here up to the end of the page. So now you can see there's a difference now. And then we are also going to use this property called position fixed, which ensures that it basically takes out the element from the document flow or the document structure, or basically the document order. So this element, as you have seen before, it would have been on top of these menu choices and this menu list, these menu list elements. However, we don't want the shopping cart to affect the order of these other elements, the menu list and the menu choices. However, the menu list and the menu choice should stay the way they were kept, as we initially kept it. It should stay as it is now, and so position fixed basically helped us to take it out of the document order so that it follows its own order, or it starts from afresh. So we can now set it to wherever we want it to, and it will not affect the other elements that are in the document. So we are going to set the value, or basically the position, so the shopping cart window should start from the top. And right now you can see some of the elements are hidden behind the navigation bar, which we will fix in a moment with z-index. And another thing is we want to start from the top left corner to the right, to the bottom right corner. And so hence why we kept the values to 0. And then we are going to ensure that the shopping cart is in front of all of the elements in the page or in the document. So we're going to set it to z-index 1. However, we have also included a z-index for our navigation bar, so we're going to set it to z-index 2 instead, to ensure that it is also in front of the navigation bar. So this looks good for now. Alright, so now another thing we want to do is we want the cart window, the full cart window, to be a dark transparent background, whereas the cart box should be white and should be towards the right side of the page, but the whole page should be a dark transparent background, so that it hides all of the other elements in the page, the navigation bar, the menu choices, as well as the menu list. So we're going to include a background color first, and we want this background color to be transparent. So basically, it shouldn't be seen, it shouldn't be visible. When the user first enters the page, they should not see the shopping cart immediately, only when they click on the button. So first we want it to be transparent, so we can set the RGB value to 0. So this basically determines what color, and then this determines how transparent it is, from 0 being completely transparent and 1 being not transparent at all. So now if we set it to a higher value, to for example 1, you'll be able to see a fully black background. However, we want the background color to be dark, but however we want it to also be transparent. So they should see a little bit of what is basically behind the shopping cart, but it shouldn't be the focus, or it shouldn't be the attention. So we're going to set it to 0.5 that is only when the user clicks on the shopping cart button. And then we want there to be a smooth transition from showing that from a transparent background to showing that background completely. So we could specify the property that we want this smooth transition to occur. and then we want it to slow down by 0.3 seconds, like from no background to a dark transparent background, and then we want it in both ways, when the user enters and when the user exits the page. So I think you can also see the transition in the background as the page reloads itself. So now we are going to set it to 0. So initially the user should not see the background color. However, we're going to include another selection, and so in this selection of the cart window we want to include the active class, and so we want to specify that when the cart window has the active class, which we will be working with in JavaScript, adding and removing the active class, we want the background color to be visible. So we're going to set the background color to a dark gray background, a dark transparent background instead. So now the background is not visible only and unless the active class is added, which we will add with JavaScript. However, we also want the text, the shopping cart elements to be hidden as well. So we're going to use this property called visibility, and we want the elements to be hidden. And then initially, however, when the cart window is active, so when the user has clicked on the shopping cart button, then it should be set to visible. So for now, it should be hidden. However, because we're working on the shopping cart design and we want to see how our shopping cart progresses as we add more and more properties, we are going to switch. Actually, I'll just set it to visible. So later on, we'll set this to hidden. Alright, so now the next element that we're going to be working on is the cart box itself, which will be the element that will hold the shopping cart items. So it will be towards the right side right here of the cart window. So in our cart box, when we check our cart box, we can see that the cart box is divided into 3 divs. So inside the cart box, which is the parent, it includes 3 children. The first one, which is class heading, the second one, which is cart items container, and the third one, which is cart checkout. And so basically we are going to use display flex. So basically we want to create a flexible layout, and we want to use display flex or flexible layout so that we can ensure that each of these elements are spaced out. So there should be space between each of these 3 parts, between these 3 elements. So we're going to use the flexible layout. However, the flex direction is usually by default in a row, so we're going to change the flex direction to a column instead. So now it should act as if we put display block. And then the next thing that we want to do is include the justify content property, and we want to ensure that there is space between these 3 elements. Alright, so now the next thing we want to do is we want to ensure that this element, this cart box, is towards the right, as right now it is pushed towards the left side. So we're going to use position fixed, and then we are going to, so now we're able to change it to where we want it to be flexibly. So we're going to set it to a right value of 0. So the lower the value, the more towards the right side it will be. So we could also change it towards 50% of the page, and you can see that the right side of the element touches the half of the cart window or half of the page width. So now we're going to set it, or we're going to keep it at a value of 0. And the next thing we want to do is set the width property, and we want to create a smooth transition from when the cart box is shown and when the cart box is hidden, based on when the shopping cart button is clicked, this button right here. So we want the width to be whatever it is set to be. So we want it to be initially set to 0, but when the user clicks on the button, it should show, and it should show smoothly from 0 to whatever it's designed to be. So for example, maybe 300 pixels or something like that. So we want it to be not abruptly like from 0 to 300 just like that. We want it to be from 0, and it changes smoothly from 0 to 300. Now because we are still working on the design, we are going to set the width to what it is made to be, and we're going to set it to 35%. So that is the width that we want the shopping cart to occupy of the cart window container. Now, because the height is already set in cart window to 100% of the viewport height, we are just going to set the height to 100% of the height of its container, which is 100% viewport height. So it will be the same height basically. Alright, so the next thing we are going to be including is the background color, and we want to set it to white. So it should basically hide the elements that are behind the shopping cart. And then we also want to create some padding spacing, so inner spacing of the element, and we want to create a spacing of 40 pixels, tops, left, right, and bottom. So there should be 40 pixels towards the top, inside the button, inside, right, inner left, and inner bottom of the element. So now you can see the change. Alright, so now because the padding space will also occupy or will expand the width of the cart box, as you can see now. So let me just add a border so that you can see the complete size of the of the card box. So now you can see that right now, if we remove the padding space, we can see that the width is somewhere less, and it is actually 35% of the page. However, adding the padding space will increase the width of the shopping cart, but we only want it to be strictly 35% width of the page, and it should not be any greater, or it shouldn't be greater or less. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use this function, we're going to use this function called calc, or calculate. And so what we want to do is we want to calculate 35%, and we want to basically deduct the 40 pixels of spacing that was added towards the top, left, right, and bottom. But however, because this is just a width deals with horizontal, so we're just going to focus on left and right padding spacing. And so the left and right padding, so 40 pixels have been added towards the top, 40 pixels right, 40 pixels left, and 40 pixels bottom of the card box, inside the card box. So because there's 40 pixels towards the left and 40 pixels towards the right each, the total width, the total amount that was extended, that increased the shopping cart, was by 80 pixels in total. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate whatever 35% minus 80 pixels is, and so now the shopping cart is back to what it originally was, what we originally decided it was supposed to be set as, which is 35%. So now it is strictly 35% as we want it to be, and the padding space is not affected anymore, since minus 80 plus 80 will deduct the extra spacing. Alright, another thing is, because you can see the total price and the button are not as visible right now because of the height, because the height property has been affected and it has extended by 80 pixels as well, since there's 40 pixels towards the top and 40 pixels towards the bottom of the shopping cart or the cart box. We have to also deduct the height property, so we're going to use the calculate function, and we want CSS to basically calculate whatever 100% minus 80 pixels should be the height of the card box. So there's still padding space, however the padding space will not increase the card box, it will still be the same height that we set it to be, since minus 80 plus 80 equals to 0, so it deducts the extra padding spacing. So now we are going to ensure that everything that is in the shopping cart is of a particular color, and we want it to be of 50 RGB 50. So this shade is not too dark and is also not too light, and it kind of creates a soft font, and it makes the web page much more soft to look at, because black is a little too rough, it feels too rigid, it does not feel as smooth, it feels heavy basically. But this is like a lighter version or a softer version of black. Another thing is we also want to include some border radius, and we're going to add border top radius only on one side of the shopping cart, so it should be right here at the left corner. So we're going to specify that we want to include a border radius, but specifically at the top and at the left. And we want this to be, we can go with 10%, we can go with 30, 40%, whatever we want it to be. However, we'd also have to change the padding space of these elements in here, so whatever you feel is best. So we're just going to keep it at 10%. Alright, so now the next value that we want to include is we want to include a property that will basically make the shopping cart a little more 3D. So before we do that, the shopping cart will basically have the cart window will be at the black transparent, the transparent black background color. So we're just going to set it at 0.5 for now, as we just want to see how the shopping cart will look like. And so right now we're going to add a shadow, a property called box shadow, and it will basically help us to create this 3D feature, making the shopping cart 3D basically. So what we want to do is the first value that we're going to include basically determines the direction of the box of the shadow. So whether the shadow of the cart box is towards the left or towards the right, so horizontal direction. And if it was a positive value, then it would be towards the right side. If it was a negative value, it would lean towards the left side. If we want it to be left, we would set a negative value. So we want it to be towards the left side of the card box, so we're going to set it at -5 pixels. Then the next value is basically whether the direction, whether it be on top or whether it be at the bottom, so vertical direction. And we don't want it to be either way. We don't want it to be at the top or bottom, so we're just going to set it at 0. And so if it was a positive value, then it would be towards the bottom. However, if it was a negative value, it would be towards the top. So for example, if I set it at 100 pixels, it should be towards the bottom, and if we set it at negative, if we set it at negative, it would be towards the top. However, we don't want to set the box shadow in either direction. So now the next value basically determines how solid the shadow is. As right now, it looks very 2D, and so we want it to be 3D looking. So we are going to set the value to a very high value of 80 pixels. I found that 80 pixels seem to be a good value. So now you can see that it looks more spread out, it's more dispersed, the particles are more dispersed, you know, it looks pretty cool 3D, and just how we want it to be. However, we want, and it looks fine just like this, but however we want to make the box shadow a little bit of a lighter color. So now the next value we're working on is how the color of the shadow. So the color of the shadow, we want it to be pretty light, so we're going to set it at a color of white. We wanted to set it to white, so we're going to set it at 255, and then the last value will determine how transparent the shadow will be. So 0 being not transparent, I mean transparent completely, and 1 being not transparent at all. So now you can fully see it, and it looks pretty glowy, and that's how we want our. This is basically helps us to create a clean UI design. So 1 seems a little too glowy. So personally, I'm going to reduce it to 0.65 so that it's a little more subtle. It's not too obvious, but you can tell that there is a glow. Alright, so now the next value we want to include is basically when the shopping cart is reduced from whatever pixel currently it is, like 35%, to 0. So when the user closes the shopping cart, we basically want to hide the text. And so any element that overflows should be hidden, while the width of the shopping cart is reduced to 0. Because even though the width of the cart box is reduced to 0, the text might just stay hanging there and it won't look good. So we are going to add this property called overflow hidden. And then we also want to work on the text so that the text doesn't just stay as it is, doesn't just stay hanging. So we are going to add this property called text wrap, and basically what we want to do is we don't want the text to wrap because it won't look good. However, what we want to do is, because we don't want it to be like into one, like all of the letters of the word of a word is in one line, is in a column. So it's like total will be like T, and then O is at the bottom, and then T is at the bottom, A bottom of T, and L bottom of A. It won't look good at all. So we are going to instead use this property called text overflow, and if the text overflows the content, the container of its container, then it should turn into these little dots. So as the width reduces, the ellipses will probably occur if the text will overflow the container. So this basically helps us to create a cleaner transition from full width to 0 width. And then one more thing that we want to include is a smooth transition from the current width to 0, and also vice versa. So once again, we are also going to include the transition property, and so we want the transition to take 0.5 seconds, and both ways, when the user opens the shopping cart and when the user closes the shopping cart. So when it's from 35% to 0. So now what we want to do is we want to set the properties as to when the cart window is active, then we want the cart box to be a particular way. So we want the width to be at 35%, because by default it should be set at 0. You know, the cart box shouldn't just be there when the user logs into the website. So it should be set at 0, but we just set it at 35 so that we can see how the design or the progress of the shopping cart. However, we want to add the active properties. So when the shopping cart is being viewed, only then the cart box should be at 35% minus the padding spacing. So we're going to set this value instead, and so we're going to set the width to this property, and so this should be set at 0. However, we'll just leave it as is so that we can see the progress of our shopping cart, the design. So, and then the next thing is we want the padding space to be visible as well. So now that the cart window is already fixed, now we want to work on the heading of the shopping cart. So now we're going to be working on the elements that is inside the cart box. And so inside the cart box, we want to select this class called heading. That is the next element that we're going to be working on. So over here, we will add a transition property for the background color. This, we can slow down the transition by 0.4 seconds, and both ways when the user is hovering on the object, on the image, and exits. So now we can see a much smoother, softer transition. We'll put these two classes together so now you can see this smooth fade overflow. Thank you for watching this video. This is part 1 of the shopping cart creation, and we designed the outlook of the cart. However, we are yet to design the elements that will be displayed inside the cart. So check out part 2's link in the description or pinned comment down below to continue. You can show your support by giving this video a thumbs up, comment down below if you found this video helpful, and subscribe to Code Harvest to get more videos like this. See you in the next video. Goodbye.